Welcome to the Millennial Body Image Project, where we dive into the unique and messy body image journey that continues to shape our generation.
We're here to flip the script on toxic wellness culture, challenge weight stigma, and tackle the intersectional forces that shape how we see our bodies and our health.
Because your body is not a problem to be fixed.
Hey friends, and welcome back to the Millennial Body Image Project, episode 2 of this season. We hope that you all have been loving our trailer and our first little intro episode with a preview of what is going to be coming up and what we're going to be doing for the next couple of episodes. So this one, we're going to get deep real fast. So we're going to be talking about your body is not a report card. And this is inspired by a bonus episode that we did over the summer in our Patreon community, where we called this, How Do You Make Peace with Weight Gain? And this was inspired by a question from one of our patrons over there. And it really hit home for a lot of people in that episode. And one of the pieces of advice that I'm pretty sure it was Christina who dropped was somewhere along the lines of, you have to remember your body is not a report card. And some people responded and were like, wait, what?
Okay. Come again?
What?
Say what now?
What do you mean? So let's dive in.
You know what? To full disclosure, at first, when I saw some of those responses, I thought they were being sarcastic. And I honestly was like, oh, they must be joking. What do you mean my body's not a report card? Duh. And I didn't realize that it was such a genuine question because it's so deeply ingrained in us. And obviously, I know that we do think of our body as a report card, which is why I said it. Remember, your body's not a report card. But I think sometimes that reminder is that might be the first time people heard that before. And this might be the first time that you've ever heard something like that too. And I really invite you to take in a little bit of what your knee-jerk reaction is when you first heard Dana say that. What came up for you immediately? Because I think that can give us and give you a really great indication of, how am I possibly treating my body, and what kind of standards and requirements am I putting on it that are like impacting me, and they influence a lot of the decisions that we make. So yeah, let's dive into it.
And, the first thing that we want to say is, if you have been living in this world for any amount of time, and if you're old enough to be listening to a podcast and understanding what we're saying, you've been living in this world for a significant amount of time. Given the inputs that we have to our knowledge base, to all the different things that we soak up like a sponge from childhood all the way into our adult lives, of course, you have at some point, if not right now, thought of your body as a report card, because we are constantly told and spoon-fed, most people, that your body is a reflection of or representative of your worth, your value in the world, your attractiveness, your lovability, your health, which we're going to dive into in 2 episodes, I think. What about weight gain? What about body image? There's so many different layers of this that our body is like a little present that's supposed to represent all of this stuff. And so we want to dive into the compassion of, yes, of course you feel this way, but also it doesn't have to be this way, because first of all, that is putting so much pressure on yourself and your body. And it's also what we think our bodies are saying about ourselves to other people in the world, about our habits, about our mental health, about our gut health, about our overall health, about the way we present ourselves in the world. So we wanted to dive into this, give you a big reframe, probably a little hug today as well, and we'll move through it.
I think one of the things too is that our body, in a lot of ways, based off of the way that society has ingrained this in us and how we've been programmed to think, is that our body, in a way, is this really tangible physical representation that you're putting out into the world and that people see. And the way that we believe and the way that we attach to this idea of what our body says about us to other people really gives us an indication of how much morality we have mentally tagged onto what body sizes say about us as a person and where we stand with our habits, our mental health, all the things that you were just saying. And how that this is, in a way, like this physical representation that we're presenting out into the world, right? And I think for a lot of people, we think of our body as this representation of what are we doing? How are we faring in the world today? And what is that showing about us? And also, too, what do our habits say about us? What does it say about our habits? What does it say about our lifestyle? What does it say about our status? There's a lot of things that get really wrapped up into it. And to me, it makes a lot of sense that people would be highly focused on their physical appearance when we have socially and tagged in all of these aspects that our body apparently says about us and that we've been like deeply ingrained in us since childhood. We're getting into that next week with Pam's episode when we talk about pop culture and how this is like really deeply ingrained in us. There is this idea that what my body looks like, feels like, what my health outcomes are and what my health says and what it says about me to other people. And then we naturally, as a way, people make judgments. This is where we show this just great discrimination. And this is where we come into fat phobia and all these things that come up. This is where, to me, in a way, this is where that's all kind of born from, is this idea of what my body says about me, therefore what other people are going to interpret about my body too. And so it makes a lot of sense that we be very attached to what our body looks like.
Yeah. And the big point that we want to make today is the problem that we have with this is the morality that is placed onto
Mhm.
this, right? Because there is a neutral way to look at certain things in this conversation. For example, if you're not sleeping well for a couple of months, you're going to have dark circles under your eyes. You're going to have more aggressive bags than you typically do. But that's a completely different way of looking at this when, for example, if you're having a lot of anxiety leading up to the holidays because you're going to see people that you haven't seen in a year, a couple of years, a couple of months, or whatever, and your body has changed in some way, shape, or form, of course you would think of your body as a report card because you have point A from the last time you saw them and point B. And if there are any physical manifestations that are different, it is, again, given the way that we have been brought up as a culture, there is a good versus bad report card type ranking placed on, have you gained weight? Have you lost weight? Do you look healthier? It's all tied up in morality or, oh, this is bad. And what this really comes back to is the eat less and exercise more, which is the advice that we have
Mhm.
been receiving for how many freaking years at this point. And what I always want to say about that is, one, it's been debunked so many times by the science because your body is not a simple math equation. It's not 1 + 1 = 2 because your body is so much more complicated than a simple math equation. And
Mhm.
you know what's really interesting about this, bringing a side story into here that I had not even thought about until this morning when we were planning this episode, is I remember in college, and wow, this has been a buried memory until today. So I was on the swim team in college, and I vividly remember the men's swim team giving the girls GPA ratings based on how big their boobs were.
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
and I guess I had just buried this memory for so long, but it again comes back to the objectification of people's bodies. Of
Mhm.
course, women's bodies, but across the gender spectrum, right? So
Yeah.
it's just by giving your body a report card score on the morality of how well you're doing, it's almost like you're trying to remove yourself from the situation and look at your body in an objectifying way. But then, because you've got that good versus bad ranking, it's like, oh, we start going through what are all the things that I think I should do to better my report card or fix my body score. And of course, it's going back to food, it's going back to exercise, it's going to, should I do Ozempic? It's going to all these different
Mhm.
GLP-1s because, again, we're so terrified of being perceived in the way that we show up in the world of what other people are thinking of us and giving us an internal ranking, whether it's conscious or subconscious, on our lovability, on our attractiveness, on our worth. Do we even care about ourselves? Have I let myself go? Which is a refrain that you've heard probably so many times before. And it's just a really hard position to be in because, of course, you would feel that way based on how we're raised, but it doesn't have to be that way. And a lot of this stuff is also really inaccurate.
Yeah. You know what I was just thinking about as you were sharing all of this is that I just want to put like a really big collective hug around all of the people in non-straight sized bodies because every single day, everywhere you go, your body is discriminated against and marginalized and treated as a report card. And it happens everywhere. It happens in our medical community. This really showcases the amount of fat phobia and discrimination that we have against body diversity in any kind of way, shape, and form. And that doesn't mean that people in smaller bodies aren't dealing with the same type of report card type stuff. You absolutely are. But I just want to put a huge hug around people who are dealing with this on a discriminatory way, in every facet of their life, like choosing which restaurant to go to because you can't fit in the seats, all of these different things that are happening to you, that it makes a lot of sense to me why you would feel that your body is a physical representation of how you're doing and what your worth is. And I just want you to know it's not. But shit, our society really does this to people on a consistent, deep level. And for the people here who are in straight sized bodies, it's understandable that you'd want to protect yourself from that. But we have to name the fact that these people in larger marginalized bodies who are in fat bodies, like any kind of larger body size that's not a straight size that can fit in any kind of seat size, whatever, that there is a real discrimination that's happening and that they are treated every single day, that their body is a report card. And I just think that it's really important for us to name that and say that this is going to be really hard when you have so many different places that you're trying to interact with on a daily basis telling you that your body is.
And taking all of that into account, the way that you can still make a little bit of peace or a little bit of neutrality with this is by learning how to take morality out of the equation. Because the objected fact is we live in a world where the farther your body is from a white, straight sized body, the more discrimination you're going to experience. That's just the way it is. One of the only ways that you can really start to make headway with yourself when you are existing in a non-white, non-straight sized body is by trying to take the morality out of the equation, right? Yes, society sucks. And this is the way that the culture is set up. And we're seeing this so much more in the age of Ozempic and AI and all this other stuff. And at the same time, that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that if there are certain factors going on in your life that has caused you to gain weight for whatever reason, that you are a morally bad person or to
Or that you're
unpack.
failing in some way.
Exactly.
And I think that's a big part of it too, is like there is this idea of like personal and moral failure if you're not fitting into this norm. And I think also too, your worth is not subjected to your size, although it makes sense that in the world we're treated as such. Because how many, raise your hand if you've ever gone to the doctor's office and they tell you to lose weight, but they never asked you anything about your health promoting behaviors of any kind or your lifestyle or what you've eaten. I can raise my hand to that. Holy smokes. And so it makes sense that like what we're seeing here is that there is this real lack of weight inclusive, even just consideration, like to be perfectly honest. And so it makes sense that in a lot of ways we would internalize that as this is something that I'm supposed to be doing and I'm not doing it. Therefore, it's my fault that my body is the way that it is. And newsflash, no, it's not.
Mhm.
There are so many factors. And even if it were, even if you weren't doing any of those things, that does not make you any less valuable, lovable, and worthy to live and exist in this world. You have a right to be here just like anyone else. And so I think that's like a big piece of this too is that we internalize this as something that is saying about us and it builds shame, builds a lot of guilt and it makes us feel like I need to start grading myself on my behaviors. And if I'm getting discriminated against or ostracized in society, then it's my fault that I'm not doing something about it.
Mhm.
And it's not. That's not how it works. It's how we've been taught, but that does not define your worth, value, attractiveness, lovability, and all of the things to exist in this world.
The complex and annoying thing about this is, like you were saying, when all of the marketing is this way, it makes it feel like it's my responsibility. The ball is in my court. And if you do some work with different practitioners or you do your own research and now you feel like you have tools that you could use, if you're not using them to the fullest extent of what you think, then you do start to think it's your fault. And the marketing of all of these different things like Ozempic and Wegovy and all these different natural Ozempics that, by the way, we recorded another episode on, which I highly you listen to and we will link it. But when you have all these different tools out here, it really does feel like sometimes there's so many things that I could be doing. If I was just doing all of these things, then I would be feeling better. Then my body would be closer to a place that I want it to be. We're going to talk about this a lot more in the functional episode and health, in the functional medicine episode and health one that we'll talk about, I think, in 2 episodes from now. But it really does feel like when there's all these opportunities out there, oh, we have the tools, so I should be able to do it. And further, going back to your doctor's office example, this has happened to both of us, and it has happened to so many of our clients is like, oh, but maybe you should do this, and maybe you should eat less and exercise more, and maybe you shouldn't eat saturated fats, and maybe you shouldn't blah, 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 blah. Did you listen to a word that I just said? Because the reality is, even if you're, quote, doing all of the things based on their checklist, it's never going to be good enough until you fit their standards. And that doesn't take into account also that there are so many things in this world that are outside of our control that are a huge contributor to the way that our body shows up in the world. For a very quick
Yeah.
example, let's say you're doing your health promoting behaviors and you're doing the things and you're feeling pretty good, but then also your mental health is suffering a little bit. And so you decide to go on some kind of SSRI or some kind of other mental health related medication. A lot of those have a very common side effect of weight gain. You could have changed nothing else in your life. And yet, if you have a lot of anxiety, if you have a lot of intrusive thoughts, if you have OCD, if you have depression, if you have bipolar disorder, whatever, and you start taking those medications, a lot of the time, you're objectively, mental health wise, healthier. And yet, your body has changed in what is perceived as a negative way. And you're like, didn't do anything. And as opposed to try something that's going to enhance my mental health and really enhance my quality of life. And yet, if you, again, are viewing your body as a report card and all of a sudden you show up to the holidays and your aunt or your grandma is like, oh, honey, what happened? And it's you don't control the mechanism of action of that drug, but what you're told when you go to Instagram, when you go to TikTok, when you go to the doctor, when you go to all these different places, it's, oh, maybe you should restrict your food. Oh, maybe you should exercise more. You were living your life, you added in this thing, and this goes for a lot of different medications. And all of a sudden, your body changed in a way that is unfavorably viewed by society. And now the impetus is on you to fix what this mechanism of action of a drug was doing. It's so messed up.
It's really interesting that you brought up control a couple of times because I actually think that's a huge heart of a lot of this too, is that we have been told throughout our entire lives that our health and our body size are 100% controllable by us. And when you have something that you like, even like I saw this thing on Instagram, not Instagram, on Pinterest, but I thought they got rid of weight shaming and like dieting on there. Like I thought that was like a whole thing that they talked about and it's like everywhere. But anyways, there was this thing about things that are in your control and it was actually something to share with children, which I was like, oh my God, please don't. But it was things that are within your control and things that are outside of your control. And one of the things that we have been told are inside your control is your lifestyle and your weight. I think also too, if you even don't even blatantly say weight or health, if you even just using the word lifestyle, when you think of lifestyle, what comes up for you? Because there feels like a lot of these things that are supposed to be highly controllable by you. I get it. People say, wait, Christina, I can control what I eat, right? I do get a say in what I eat and everything like that. And I do get to control my health promoting behaviors and my engagement in them. But newsflash, what you don't get to control is what your body does with those health promoting behaviors. And that's what's really unfair too. And even too, like not everyone has access to eat all the different things or work out the same way or have access to all the same stuff that other people do, including these medications and stuff like that. If people are going down that road, that is for sure going to come up as a moral standard now. Like if you're, I can just see it coming. But either you're on it because you're taking care of yourself or you're not. And that's irresponsible. I could totally see that coming up. But to me, I think a lot of it comes down to what do I actually have control over and what have I been told I have control over? And when we have the perception that we have control over something and you're not controlling that thing, then that shit's on you. And when you say that's on you, then that means that it's your fault and you're not doing enough. And that's where shame, that's where guilt, that's where all of those icky feelings that come up for us every single time we look in the mirror and our pants don't fit anymore. Or every single time we eat a piece of cake at our kid's birthday party and we have more than what we wanted. Or every time we eat out and we make a decision that we feel like is our fault in some way, then those to you are like these controllable things. And if you're not doing it, then it's your fault. And it's somehow your problem. And therefore, your body is a representation of all the things that you're either doing or not doing. And that's why it feels like a report card, right? So the truth is, to me, like the thing that I want to get to is what are we grading ourselves on? What are we grading ourselves on? What is the barometer for where we're supposed to land with all these different things? And are we even taking into consideration what the expectations are and what our capacity is and what the reality is and what we actually have influence over and the things that we actually have access to? Because to me, if we're grading ourselves on expectations that we cannot meet because we do not have the capacity or the ability or anything else or the influence over, then we are continually setting ourselves up for failure
Mhm.
every single day and to feel crappy about our body.
Mhm. One of the really hard parts about this, and this is one of the reasons that people really struggle with body image, is this being perceived by other people, or what will other people think about me, or what will other people judge me for? What are they going to say about me? This is a big thing with the holidays. And sometimes this is just an internal dialogue. Sometimes it actually will manifest, and other times it will not. But the anxiety leading up to it does not change, regardless of it. But what's really interesting about this is this makes me think of the argument or like analogy in schools with dress codes and like with girls that are wearing like spaghetti straps or tube tops or whatever. And people saying, oh, that's so distracting to boys. That's the boys' problem, not the girls' problem. And so it's very similar with this is why should I have to change my body to make you more comfortable? I don't know. That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. Given that we can't change what other people's perception of us unless they come down this rabbit hole with us and do their own education, which is way less likely to happen than us educating ourselves and digging into why do I feel this way about my body? Why do I view my body as a report card? And what I would encourage a lot of you to do if you're noticing any resistance to what we're talking about in this episode, which like of course you would, right? We're talking there's so many of courses in this episode. Of course you would feel this way. If you are noticing any kind of resistance to this, what's really interesting is for every person, there's going to be different factors that go into this. There are, of course, some universal factors, I would say, like weight stigma and fat phobia in our culture, in the medical system, in all these different places, racism, socioeconomic inequality, wealth, all these different things, right? But
Misogyny, the patriarchy, all of these things, capitalism listed in
right.
here, they all play a role.
These are the universals that are always going to be present for people with the way that our system is set up. For you, your pie chart of what matters the most and what is really coming up in those brain goblins every single day is something that you need to pay attention to because the pieces of the pie that are bigger, if you can make any kind of headway on those, that will make a huge difference in the way that you view yourself and the way that you might start to think less of your body as a report card. Because while we can't change what other people think of us, we can start to change what we think of ourselves by restructuring and reframing a lot of these different ideals as well. And so if you are having any resistance to this, or you're like, oh, this is interesting, I don't really know about this, what we would encourage you to do is do a little bit of a brain dump, as we call it, of like, what is coming up for me during this episode? Where am I feeling resistance versus where am I nodding my head versus where am I like, oh my God, I need to turn this off right now. This is really uncomfortable for me. And that may be an indication that there's just a lot of work that we need to do here. Body image work is a long journey, right? This is not a 100-meter dash. This is an ultra marathon. This is a triple Ironman triathlon that goes on and on. This is work that we will continue to do our entire lives because, newsflash, the season that you're in right now, your body is never going to stay this way for your entire life. It's going to change in different ways. That is the only constant, that your body will change. And so you might be feeling pretty good about your body now, and this is not to be a scare tactic. This is just to say your body's going to change and you're going to have feelings that come up with your body at different points in your life. Instead of relying on the, oh, if I just lose weight, it'll fix my body image, because spoiler alert, it won't. Maybe we should examine more of like, why do I feel negatively about my body? Why am I giving my body a quote bad score on this report card? Why do I view my body as a report card in the first place? That can help you make so many far leaps and bounds in your self-perception and your body image.
Yeah, I think that's such a good invitation for people to do, to spend some time kind of self-reflecting a little bit. One of the things for me that keeps coming up as well is the concept of control and influence, and also the idea of what am I carrying that's not mine to carry? I think it'd be really easy for people to do that reflection and then be like, I still want to change my body. That's okay.
Mhm.
That is so
Of
okay.
course
We're
you
here for
do.
that. Of course you do, right? We just listed all the ways in which our bodies are treated as this report card. And what we're looking for is ways that you can take some of these things as less of places for you to feel guilt and shame about, and more for you to take onus over for yourself and make it be more for you than it is about anyone else. And you don't have to change your body to be treated better in society. Will society maybe treat you better and be easier if you are smaller? Yeah, we know that. We have the data to prove that. We
Mhm.
get it. But do you owe that to society? No, you most certainly do not. Do not owe that to anybody. It reminded me of that episode that we were talking about over the summer around exercise
Yeah.
and Patreon. Remember? And how we were talking about how sometimes there's this idea of I don't want to engage in these things because of what it represents. Or what if it does change my body? And people are probably like, doesn't everyone want to change their body? And wouldn't that be great? And I also just want to speak for the people out there who hear this and are like, no, I'm not getting involved in this stuff. I'm not going to promote these things. I'm not going to engage in the societal system that's meant to put people down and make people feel bad about their bodies. And I don't want to engage in that. And at the same time, also in a way, kind of letting, in a way, like society dictate how you interact with your body and yourself too. And I just really love the idea of people taking onus over themselves and their body and having agency and autonomy and understanding the influence that society has placed on us. And then also, how do we take that back for ourselves? And I think identifying that, oh, wow, maybe I have been treating my body like a report card. Maybe I have been using my body as a way to protect myself from judgments of others and things like that. And that makes sense. It makes so much sense. But how can I take onus of that? How can I take that back for myself as something for, I'm not a report card. My body is worthy just as it is. And I don't have to explain any of my behaviors to anybody to justify my body in any way, shape, or form. No one needs to know your lab results other than you and your own doctor. And no one needs to know what kind of behaviors you're engaging in or not engaging in. That's none of their business. It's yours for you to have. And it is interesting how I think this like also taps into that thing where it's this idea of I need to declare. This is what I hate about January, and we're coming up to it. Everyone like publicly declares the stuff that they're going to be doing. And it's under this guise of accountability, but it's really built in with a lot of shame, right? Like the accountability is wonderful to have a buddy to go for walks with and to eat things with and to like have these like behavior changes and working with a nutritionist and all these different aspects of it. But if it's creating an environment where it's like almost like shameful if you don't show up or you're feeling guilty about certain stuff, then the quote unquote accountability is really dangerous. And it's like feeding into this entire idea of treating your behaviors and your body as like almost this physical representation of how you're showing up and what you're doing and what you're not doing and where you're good enough and where you're not good enough. And that is a very dangerous place to be playing.
100%. This is a very difficult topic. This is, as you will see with many of our episodes coming up and what we've always done on Wholehearted Eating before we rebranded. It is really hard to be in this middle ground, right? Like you're not firmly in the dieting camp. And if you're not firmly in the anti-diet camp, that it can also feel very ostracizing if you ever have thoughts of wanting to lose weight. What we also want to say is you are not a moral failure in any way if you think of your body as a report card, if you've been grading your body
Mhm.
as a report card. If you have been trying to be in this non-diet, more body neutrality liberation space for a while and you still have thoughts of losing weight, that doesn't mean you don't belong. That also doesn't mean that you're a moral failure. We are here to just meet you exactly where you are and guide you in a way that is gentle and supportive and an invitation to be like, let's look at what's coming up here and what is really negatively affecting your quality of life, whether it's related to health, whether it's related to your body image. And by the way, those are two separate things. They are not equated, no matter what Oprah says. My God, if you have thoughts and feelings, comments, questions about this episode, couple ways to get in touch with us. You can find us on Instagram, Millennial Body Image Project. You can also email us, millennialbodyimageproject@gmail. If you are part of our Patreon community, you can also either comment directly on this episode, or if you want to remain anonymous in your comments, which is totally fine, you can send us a direct message. And we're always posting more support, more resources, bonus episodes, and everything over there. So we really encourage you to join us, get a free trial for the month of October. And we'll, of course, link all of the different episodes that we mentioned here. So the Making Peace with Weight Gain, the exercise episode over the summer, which was called What If I Don't Want to Exercise? We'll also talk about the natural Ozempic episode. And we've got a lot of resources over there, a lot of support, a great community. And so we really encourage you to check that out if you're interested. Speaking of, I wanted to let you know very quickly about a couple other things that you can look forward to over in our bonus community this month. If you're interested more on this discussion specifically, there's a bonus episode called Is Weight a Symptom that you can actually go listen to right now because we dropped it this morning. This weekend, we're dropping another related bonus episode all about what people are calling the new BMI, aka BRI, or the Body Roundness Index. So we're going to be talking about that. It's questionable validity and some of the major issues with it. And then also at the end of this month, we're dropping an episode that is all about struggling with body image when it feels like everyone and their mom is on Ozempic or other GLP-1s. Next week, we are super excited to bring you a pop culture and millennial body image focused episode.
A guest that I'm super excited to.
Going to be great. And then we're going to be talking about functional medicine and intergenerational body image issues. So much great stuff coming up on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. And obviously for the foreseeable future, you've got questions, you've got comments, I would say Instagram, email, and then of course over on our Patreon community as well. And all of the links will be in the show notes. And thanks so much for being here.
Welcome to the Millennial Body Image Project.